Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, featuring yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted. It's the first time we've been together in studio in a while.
It's great to be back here. The wind will be back from the fabulous Florida Keys where we had a great time, and we had an extended trip down there for 8 weeks, my wife and I. So I'm glad to be back here to see the studio, and you guys are still here, and look forward to a great show.
Well, it's a tough life, Ted. Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do those things, right?
Somebody's got to do it. Well, as you can see, we're at the kind of in the heart of Gator Nation here. And I know we're not a sports show, but I got to mention that we're at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. These are all helmets that are related to Steve Spurrier. If you've never been to Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, you ought to check it out at Celebration Point, right off the interstate in Gainesville, Florida. And I tell you what, man, I got to mention it being here. It's not a very happy time in Gator Nation. We had an ugly loss. I give UCF a lot of credit, but it was an ugly loss for the Gators. No doubt.
Yeah, it was. It really was. You know, after coming off the win, their opening game, 55-0. And that's why it's so good to come in here, because you get to see the memorabilia of the great Florida Gator Nation. And they'll be back. They'll come back. And this was a moment in time. And corrections will be made, and we'll see what they do next week against LSU, right?
Yes, at LSU.
At LSU. This will be a good test for the Gators.
It definitely will be.
Absolve all their pasts.
I know we're not a sports show, but there's one thing I want to mention, because I do think I'm seeing it on a national level, and I think it's symbolic of some of the cultural issues we're having now. We had a spitting incident where one of our players, in a very crucial time in the game, spit on the opposing player, and it essentially, I'm not taking anything away from South Florida's win, but it essentially gave them a chance to win the game. And I mention that because we saw the same thing in the opener of the NFL on Thursday night. We had a spitting incident there. And, of course, we're seeing it on our streets now, where people feel like they can literally spit on cops and all of that kind of thing.
Subway sandwiches.
Yeah, we've just really it's symbolic, I think, Ted, of where our mindset is and the cultural divide, to me.
It really is, and I think you can bring this into politics. You look at the decorum up in Washington and around the nation, and the anger that's coming out of the Democratic Party promoting violence and using all the F-bombs and things like that. And it trickles down to the society, and we're no better than the people in our country that are leading it. And that means we, the people, we have to elect better leaders and set a different tone. You know, what happened over the weekend with the Gators and with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cowboys, that spitting, it reminds me of that movie, The Replacement, with Gene Hackman and Keanu Reeves. And it came down to Gene Hackman was such a powerful coach in that, where he talked about its character. It's, responsibility. He talked about these things, to raise yourself up, because he had a bunch of replacement players during the NFL strike. And, I think that is, just goes down to the basics of, being successful, is following those principles.
And speaking of principles, and I'm glad you mentioned that, we've got a story for you here that and I was going to save this for later, but it's stunning but not really surprising. But Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, I think he's from Virginia, right?
Yep.
In a hearing, if you will, Senate hearing, he mocks the founding belief and the founding principles of this, the Declaration of Independence, and he actually ties it to Sharia law.
This was shocking.
Yeah, I want to play a snippet from it. This is Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, and listen to what he says, because he brings up Marco Rubio in this when he's questioning the person that they're talking about for foreign affairs there. And listen to what he says. It's just shocking, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Opening comments, and I asked to get a copy of them so I could read them and make sure I quoted them correctly. you state, and this is a quote from Secretary Rubio, our rights come from God, our creator, not from our laws, not from our governments. I find that very, very troubling. I'm a devout person. I was a missionary in Honduras. We've got other devout folks in this room, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, American. The notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government, but come from the creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. It's a theocratic regime that bases its rule on Shia law and targets Sunnis, Baha'is, Jews, Christians, and other religious minorities. And they do it because they believe that they understand what natural rights are from their creator. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our governments is extremely troubling. I think the motto over the Supreme Court is equal justice under law, the oath that you and
I mean, all I can say is, wow. It makes me almost speechless. So while I'm gathering my thoughts, I'll hear your thoughts on this, Ted.
I was pretty much the same way. You know, here's a guy, he's a sitting senator from the state of Virginia. He was almost president or vice president. And for him to say our rights come from government and laws, he misses the whole thing. You know, it goes back to the founding of this country. Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers that declared our rights come from a creator, not from government. Government's instituted by we the people to give them the authority to create laws. And it's the laws from the government that are there to protect our God-given rights. And I mean, this guy is so off base, and it just, I think it's a great example, John, of what the mindset of the Democratic Party is that has gone so liberal, progressive, communist. And, you know, this is, again, why we're here, to educate people. These people don't understand the very basic founding principles of this country. And, you know, for Senator Kaine to say that, you know, there's a good rebuttal by Senator Cruz, and I know you've got a little snippet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, this guy, not only was he close to, you know, being vice president, that makes you a heartbeat away from president, but he's supposed to be, quote, a moderate from a purplish, if you will, state. And we'll find out how purple it is soon when they have the governor's race. But, you know, he's not supposed to be this, or he's not portrayed as a wacko leftist communist or whatever. You know, he's supposed to be mainstream Democratic Party. And if that's true, to use their phrase, it is pretty depressing. And it kind of, you know, Ted, I used to be a Democrat. We've talked about that. And, you know, I come from a pretty hardcore Democratic kind of yellow dog or whatever you want to call it, blue dog Democratic people. But I think, and I don't say this much, but I think like my dad, for instance, would be literally rolling over in his grave if he heard what Tim Kaine said.
He would be, and your dad probably couldn't be elected today running on the principles he had because, you know, the principles he had, I mean, were founded in the founding of this country. And he believed in those things that John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, and all these people talked about. Tim Kaine is so far off base here that our rights don't come from a creator. I mean, good God, that's the very basic thing this country is founded on. It was a religious persecution that drove the Pilgrims over here that went through a struggle. And that's a great story. If nobody's ever followed how the Pilgrims came to come over here, I mean, it took them 10 to 15 years to even be able to leave and wind up over here. And it was for religious freedom. And then out of that, of course, our principles came out of this country, you know, a couple hundred years later or 100 years later. Yeah, so how does somebody like this get into the Senate, and how does somebody like him stay in there? But again, as you brought up, this is the mindset of the modern liberal, progressive, communist party. Your dad wouldn't recognize this party today, and he would roll over in his grave.
And he also goes on not only to talk about the founding principles and how you know, concerned he is that someone would believe that our rights come from God. He goes on to compare that belief system to Sharia law, to what Iranian does and all that. And we're coming up on 9/11 in a few days and everything else. It's just shocking that he would actually believe that. And if he truly does believe it, and it's not just some act to pacify the hardcore left, then man, I mean, we're in real trouble, because this guy, Tim Kaine, I don't know a whole lot about him personally, but from what I can see, he obviously came from a decent background. I'm sure he did fairly,
he was a missionary.
Yeah,
at
fairly
one time.
well in school and all
Right.
that. So I say that he's supposed to be, and I'm not talking about his politics per se, but he's supposed to be representative of mainstream America and what America is all about. You would think, I would assume his dad probably was and all that, but now he's morphed into this guy, maybe it's his true self, that literally is godless. And not only that,
Sure
but
sounds like it.
yeah, it's just crazy.
Well, and to compare,
Go ahead.
compare our government or the founding of this country, our rights come from a creator, to Sharia law in a theocracy like Iran. You know, he's just clueless. I mean, it's dangerous that people in Washington are up there guiding laws and ushering laws through the process up there and changing the cultural fabric of this nation. He needs to go. And I hope the people of Virginia understand that. He's been there. He doesn't own that seat. Bring somebody else in there that'll be more moderate, that'll work to make America, you know, a united nation or a united state again, and not this continued division that they do and everybody on the left is doing, it seems like.
Yeah, I think the best way that Virginia voters could send a message to Tim Kaine is upcoming vote for Winsome Sears for that governor's race.
That's right.
Because, you know, God
That
help
really
you
is. That really is.
if you go the other way. But what this shows to me, Ted, is one of the reasons why we're doing this show, and the main reason. There's a desperate need to educate, motivate, and activate people, because here you have a guy who should be a highly, as I said, educated, motivated person, and he's certainly activated, and he has no understanding that here's the fundamental thing. If your rights come from government, they can easily be stripped away by a different government or the same government or whatever.
He must have missed that.
It's fundamental to our belief system. You don't have to believe in the Christian whatever. I mean, believe in what you want, but if you don't have inalienable rights, look that term up if you don't understand it, then government can take your rights away. And Ted Cruz, we're going to play a snippet from that same hearing that I have to give it to Senator Cruz from Texas. He's spot on with this, Ted.
He spanks him. I mean, he gets his thinking straightened out by what he says here.
So let's play that real quick, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
He is a friend. I would actually encourage observers to go back and listen to what Senator Kaine said, because I have to say I think was disturbing and showed much of where today's Democrat Party has gone wrong. So Senator Kaine said in this hearing that he found it a radical and dangerous notion that you would say our rights came from God and not from government. I just walked into the hearing as he was saying that, and I almost fell out of my chair. Because that radical and dangerous notion, in his words, is literally the founding principle upon which the United States of America was created. And if you do not believe me, and you made reference to this, Mr. Barnes, then you can believe perhaps the most prominent Virginian to ever serve, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator, not by government, not by the Democratic National Committee, but by God, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I have to say it is stunning to me that the principle that God has given us natural rights is now deemed by Democrats some radical and dangerous notion. Mr. Jefferson was right when he wrote those words. Government exists to protect those rights.
Well, there you go, Ted. Go, you take it from here.
No, there you have it. I mean, Senator Cruz was very succinct, very direct, and very accurate. Our rights come from a creator. I mean, it's a basic founding principles and understanding of what this country is. And for Senator Kaine to move and say it's like Sharia law, I mean, the guy's clueless. And again, you can understand why there's such a divide in Washington on the direction of the nation. And again, that shows the complete disconnect of the Democrat, whatever you want to call that other party. They're not representing America. They're not working to unify this country. They're working to change the very basic founding principles of it, and they need to go. Yeah,
well, Senator Cruz, he also says in there later on, and we couldn't play more than a certain amount of it, he gives an example of the difference between the inalienable rights given by our Creator and government. He uses the example of slavery, and it's an excellent example. Because slavery, and yes, I know we have a checkered past on that, and we had to make compromises, or we did, because we're human beings, we're frailties. But he makes the point that slavery was wrong, is wrong, always has been wrong. And the point he's making in that is if you left it totally up to men, slavery could come back.
It could.
They could vote it back in, so to speak, if it's not coming from God.
Well, I'm reading a book right now about Andrew Jackson, and they went against the treaties they had made with the American Indians. There was treaty after treaty that had been written that they broke, and they pushed the Indians further and further west, and it was because those were laws of men. They did not follow the constitutional laws, and there was a lot of great debates on the floor up there of why what they were doing was wrong, but it was the majority rule that went against it, and the same thing with slavery. This is why the rule of law is so important, and this is why when you have a breakdown of that, you get a breakdown of society, and you get a breakdown of freedom and liberties. Period.
Well, there's what Senator Kaine says is not only a misunderstanding or not an understanding of the founding principles, but the Democrats at an even deeper level literally seem to believe that the Constitution was written to empower the federal government to rule, if you will, over the people. It is exactly the opposite. Can you hear me, people out there? It's exactly the opposite. The Constitution was written to protect the free people of the United States of America from the overreach of government, not the other way around. So they've got the whole coin flipped the wrong way.
They really do, but it's a resounding theme. They keep coming back. You listen to them, how they want to change it, and it's a living, breathing document, the Constitution. That's like saying the 10 Commandments are a living, breathing document that we should be able to change as we want to. And what the Democrats are doing are changing the principles to serve their needs, and their needs are to give government more control. And as you and I talked about earlier, if the government gives you something as far as rights and things they think about, they can snatch it away just that easy. And if you don't believe that, look at some of these other countries where they take those rights away, and you can look at it here too. We can talk more about that. Do you really own property in America?
Yeah. Well, all you got to do is look. I mean, obviously you can look out your own window, but look what's happening in free societies in Europe where they don't have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Like in England, they're putting people in jail and in prison for free speech on the internet. It's and we talked about that in the past. But
they try to do that in Virginia with the parents at the school board meetings, and
absolutely.
They're still trying to
domestic
do that.
terrorists. If you went to the school
and that's
board
why
meeting.
the deep state is being flushed out by Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and the likes of that. They're changing all of that, and that it's going to be ugly as we go through this, but it'll be well worth it when we get to the other side.
But, when I was putting the show notes together, Ted, I thought about a topic we talked about a week or two ago about how thoughts and prayers, and we're going to play this video right now. We played it before, but this was after the tragedy that happened at the school shooting there, the Catholic school shooting in Minneapolis. And this is the Minneapolis mayor, and I think it shows a pattern of where the Democratic Party, the modern Democratic Party, is trying to take this nation. Let's play it. We'll come back and talk about it.
And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity.
Hand down to the church today and promptly.
Where he talks about there, Ted, that he's tired of hearing about thoughts and prayers. And you heard that really across the board for several years now with the Democratic Party. It seems like there's actually a war on religious belief in this country now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there really is. There's no doubt about that, John. And, you know, let's look at one of our greatest exports we did. It was Rosie O'Donnell going to Ireland. And she was talking about this was a MAGA person that, you know, that shows you how these MAGA people are. And then she's like, uh-oh, I misspoke and made an apology. But that shows you the level of hatred that they have for this country and the founding principles. And we need to export more people that think that way and encourage them to leave. You know, maybe what Trump can put that in with the immigration. We'll give you $1,000 to leave and get the people out of here that believe that way. If you don't believe the way it was set up and the way this country's run, feel free to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if everywhere you look is remnants, if you will, or of slogans of the past that show that what Tim McCain was saying is just crazy. But, you know, we have "In God We Trust." I guess now it's going to be "In Zoran Madami We Trust," I guess.
Zoran Madami and the Democrat interpretation of the day.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Ten Commandments, and I saw this meme and I posted it. There's there's so much truth to this. Think about that. We've nearly 1,000 pages in our law books. 100,000 pages because we can't follow the basic 10 commandments.
Can you imagine how simple life would be if we had the 10 commandments and that was it?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And, you know, forget your past. You're doomed to repeat the worst part of it. We should go back
to that because I didn't see where it says you owe taxes.
But that is, Ted, we're getting ready to go on commercial break, but that is exactly why we're here doing this show, to educate, motivate, and activate people. Because, I mean, what Tim Kaine said is just very symbolic of how much work we have to do, because young people are listening to this crap and may believe that their rights come from government. They come from whoever the president is.
You can see them where they're protesting in Oregon, Washington State, Chicago, all these states at LA, where the nefarious left organizations are paying people to protest, trying to tear down this country. You know, those people, they wouldn't have a clue if they lost the internet and lost electricity for a day. They'd all melt and go away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We hope you'll look at our little tagline there that says "Contact Freddie" if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show. You know, like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide, and become a sponsor, and certainly give business to our sponsors. We'll be right back, Ted.
Yep.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Or that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast. Well, Ted, I'm going to take you down memory lane right now.
I appreciate you doing that.
We're going to play a quick video of Ocasio-Cortez a few years back telling people why they're looting. This is, if you wonder why people are looting, she's telling, and I play this because then we're going to talk about something that just recently happened that basically backs up everything Ocasio-Cortez said. So, Ted, I hate to punish you like this, but let's hear from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
You owe me on this.
And they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night. And so they go out and they need to feed their child. And they don't.
There you go, man. Ocasio-Cortez telling you that they're looting Gucci's and Rolexes because they need bread.
They're hungry. We just heard that the movie Aladdin was based on Aladdin stealing a loaf of bread, and maybe that's where she got her foundational principles from Aladdin. And, you know, you brought this up, and I have to mention this. You know, I think most people know I had a little incident with Miss AOC, my former member of Congress. And it was all based on this video. When she's telling her constituents, and this is at the beginning of COVID, when they suspended rent in New York City, you didn't have to pay your rent, you couldn't be evicted. She's telling people, if you've got a struggle to pay your rent or feed your family, it is okay to lift a loaf of bread from the shopkeeper. And this is what prompted me to go ask her if she was really meant that. And of course, that de-escalated rather rapidly. But I mentioned to her that if this is the best you can recommend when you got food pantries, food stamps, faith-based organizations, you've got food kitchens, the best you can recommend is it's okay to steal. It's not okay with the shop owner. And again, I think this shows a breakdown in society that maybe leads to people spitting on the football field or in the NFL games. And those people need to be disciplined severely as the shoplifter. And I know as our parents, you know, I remember still a bubble gum, the bazooka one, back when I was a kid in Minnesota. It would cost a penny, and I took it. My mom, when she found out, made me go back to the shop owner and tell him I stole that and give him a penny. And, you know, that's what parents are supposed to do. I've never heard my parents or my grandparents or anybody I respect tell their kids, it's okay to steal that if you're hungry. It's okay to steal a Gucci if you're hungry. It's not okay. And, you know, for members of Congress to do that, it's despicable. Throw her out.
Well, you know, we just heard from Ocasio-Cortez, and I guess in a way she's backing a solution for what you're talking about, because now she's backing Mandami for mayor of New York. And, you know, shoplifting won't be an issue because there'll be no shops to lift from other than government shops. And, you're
I
owed
wonder
that.
how that is when you shoplift from the government store. Like you said, it'll probably be free, so it's okay. We're going to give it to you anyway, so just take what you want.
That's their solution. Do away with any mom and pop or any major chain store.
But they're going to have cigarettes and alcohol in there because if you don't have that, that's discriminatory.
Yeah, but the government makes good money off that.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, you heard from Ocasio-Cortez, and if you think that's just a blast from the past, Ted, now this comes to you via Breitbart. Representative Jasmine Crockett says in an interview on a podcast, no good point in prosecuting crimes committed to survive. So you can do anything you want to do if it's about survival. So I guess we're already, according to her, in Mad Max territory.
Basically, right? And who's going to define survival? I need a new boat, so I'm going to go steal one because it's survival, right?
Yeah, I need a brand new one.
I need a boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want an old one. I don't want to use one. I want a new boat because it's necessary for me to survive.
Well, Ms. Crockett argued this week that poverty can drive people to commit certain crimes, arguing during a podcast interview that prosecutions, so prosecuting criminals, are not always justified when offenses involve basic survival needs. Well, Ted, we're seeing all the time when you don't prosecute someone, and I mentioned this to you before we started the show, and you just heard about it, and we're not going to play the video, we don't have it, but you can see parts of it, and it's pretty graphic. We talk about Ukraine and everything, a young Ukrainian woman, 22 years old, in North Carolina, got on a train, all this is on video, minding her business, looking at her phone, and a guy who has been arrested 14 times, Ted, 14 times for all kind of offenses, comes up, jumps up from behind her, and with a pocket knife jams it in her throat and kills this young 22-year-old woman in cold blood this weekend. And he had 14 prior arrests.
Yeah, but some of those were probably for food. He needed the food, so they let him out. John, this is going back of a breakdown society, and I showed you that video of the lady in Chicago 5 days ago that a young person came up, punched her, broke her bones in her facial bones, blackened her eye, reddened her eye, made it bleed within the orbit. And he'd been in jail 20-some times and arrested for violence, aggravated assault, theft, all these things, and they let him out. And this is what Crockett wants to do over and over again. This is what the liberal attorney generals around the country that are funded by George Soros and those liberal ideology groups that hate America. And George Soros, that's his whole thing. He hates this country. And, so he's going to do whatever he can to destroy it. I don't know why he hasn't been investigated and run out of this country as he's been run out of so many other countries, other than he supports the Democratic cause and they don't go after him. But it's a breakdown of survival when you of society. When you have that, John, chaos comes next.
Yeah. Well, the Democrats now are always talking about the Nazis and everything and accusing everybody that's opposed to them of a Nazi. But you got a proven Nazi collaborator in Soros, and they say nothing about him.
And he's an oligarch.
And now they've anointed his son as the next heir apparent. But Ted, you mentioned
more radical. He's more radical than his father.
Far be it from me to correct you, but I got to correct you on something you just said. You mentioned something that happened in Chicago, and that couldn't possibly be true what you said because Chicago has no crime.
I stand corrected,
Labor
John.
Day weekend, they had like about a dozen people killed. Let's just narrow it down to actually killed. Now, today, their latest statistics come out after 10 o'clock, but up to this point, they've had 6 people just killed, shot, There's no crime in Chicago, Ted. What are you talking about?
We talked this on Friday. Pritzker's first move, if Trump moves in there with the National Guard, he's going to be on defense, and he's going to take him to court. So he's going to be on defense to prevent Trump from bringing safety into Chicago. And that shows you how warped their thinking are. It would think you would embrace them. And as we look back at Marion Bowser in Washington, D.C., she was against Trump coming in there. But after he was there for a week, she goes, wow, crime has really gone down. And then she pivoted away from that. Now she's suing him because the Democrat established machine said you can't praise Trump for what he did. You know what's interesting? Al Lawson was a longtime state senator here in the state, and he tried to be a moderate. And when he came into Washington, it was, I served with him for a couple terms. He said that in the conference, the Democrat conference, he stood up. They were talking about Obamacare. He goes, there are some problems with it. He said they shut him down and wouldn't let him, have any more airtime. And they worked against him. In fact, that the squad ran against him, got him unelected.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, going back to Chicago real quick, if Pritzker ever really got hungry, I don't think bread would be. I mean, he'd be stealing whole
at
cows.
The Chicago livestock exchange.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. But I love hearing this. What Jasmine Crockett says here. She says that prosecutions are not always justified when offenses involve basic survival needs. And you kind of referred to it when we first read that. What does that mean, and who defines what is your basic survival need?
Well, you need air, food, and water are your basic ones, and it goes on from there. Those things are readily available in this country. Now, if we're in the African sub-Saharan desert, those things aren't available. If you're in some of these foreign countries, it's not available. But in this country, all you've got to do is ask. And this is where I have a problem with these panhandlers on the street. There's a program that is out there for anybody that has needs. We've lacked on the mental health side that we need to bolster, and hopefully Trump will do that. But that was through the misgivings of Congress, where they got rid of the mental health situation and the treatment and therapies for that. But for the basic needs of housing, food, and all these survival things, you've got that, and they'll train people how to get back into society and work and become a productive member of society. But you got to have the want. If you don't have the want, you're going to be your program.
Well, as always, you trigger a thought in me, Ted.
That's
and,
job.
Going back to our first story of the show, and combining our basic survival needs, the Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights.
The Bill of Rights. You need freedom of speech.
To protect those God-given rights.
Yes, absolutely. And in some of these neighborhoods, unfortunately, you need your Second Amendment rights. That's for sure. That's a basic survival need. And if the Democrats get their way, you're going to need that survival need more than we ever thought since the Civil War.
That'll be interesting, because the Democrats will take that away, and they'll give everybody bread.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to stop the thieving and the kind of antics you see here? And this poor lady that fled from Ukraine because it's a war-torn country to come here to safety and liberty and freedom in America, gets stabbed by a guy and dies by a guy that's been in prison or been arrested 14 different times and let go under Crockett's theory that he needed bread.
Well, with Jasmine Crockett, there's good news and bad news.
Is she leaving?
Well, the good news is with the redistricting of Texas, if that holds up, there's a very good chance that she will lose her seat in Congress. But everybody who might be celebrating, keep this in mind, that I'm not sure she even wants to be in Congress anymore, because I think her ultimate goal is to be a YouTube influencer or whatever and make millions off of this. And remember this, Ted, always remember, when you love, hate, or whatever, what you're seeing out of Jasmine Crockett is an absolute act.
It sure is.
And if you don't believe me, I want to play a video we've played a couple of months ago that shows her when she was first going to run for Congress, when she was a member of the Texas House of Representatives. I don't care really about what she's saying. I want you to hear, ladies and gentlemen, how she's saying it.
How articulate she is, how well-dressed she is, and how respectful she is in the interview.
Yeah, check this out.
You're a state representative, and now you are running for Congress. Why is that, and what are your priorities?
Absolutely. First of all, it's good to see you in the new year. No one could have told me that when I went down to Austin, now that I would be running for Congress. It's just not what my plan was. But what I've always decided is that I would step up when there was a need. And so I fully anticipated that our Congresswoman would serve out at least one more term, if not more than one term, in Congress. But when she called me and said, I think it's time for me to retire, and you're the one that I believe should take my seat, I really was kind of caught off guard. I didn't anticipate that. If anyone knows anything about the Congresswoman, they know that she had been talking about retirement for quite some time. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I just got to Austin and I had to meet 5 people to get here. I don't know about this. It's a huge responsibility.
I mean, that gal, that to me, I'm sure was the real Jasmine Crockett, if you will, the one that her parents raised and everything, and the way she's, and look how she's dressed and how she's talking. It doesn't even matter to me what she's saying. She's very articulate. She's an extremely intelligent person, a highly skilled lawyer from what I understand.
Right.
But now we ain't picking cotton. We're not going to pick your cotton anymore. I mean, my God, how phony can you be?
Really. And then, she was going in the Texas State House. Her whole thing was redistricting. She wanted more Democrat seats, and that tide got turned on her, and the Republicans redistricted her, hopefully out of her seat, and that she'll move on to be an influencer, which really shows you, if she does that, what her whole intent was. She wasn't up there for a cause. She was up there for a job and to move on to the next step. And there's too many people in Washington that are like that. They're not there for a cause for this country and the preservation of our country and our rights, our God-given rights. They're there to move on to the next gig in life, and we need to get rid of those kind.
Yeah, and I don't really begrudge people for being who or what they ever want to be, but think about this. We played Ocasio-Cortez earlier. We're not going to play it again. We'll spare you for now. And we just had Jasmine Crockett. Well, they're phony. I mean, Ocasio-Cortez, I don't know if you saw this, but she had to file this report because they used a lot of campaign money in this thing. But when she was doing this oligarchy tour with Bernard Sanders, she actually, in advance of him, they were going to have one in some part of Nevada, not in Las Vegas, but she flew out early on a private jet, went to a spa for a couple of days.
Is that right?
Literally is almost, it was over almost $6,000 where she's pampered and everything for a couple of days.
No,
just
pampered.
2 days before Bernie showed up, and then they went to the other. And
Pampered.
she charged that to her donors. She
Sure,
didn't pay for it out of her pocket. I mean, these people are just phony, man.
They really are. And I hope the people of Brooklyn wake up, or the Bronx, wherever she is, and just realize this. Some of them have, but we'll see in this next election. She's got the influence of the media that's going to work with her. The good thing is the legacy media is losing influence. But then you have the social media people that are going to prop her up. But I hope Americans wake up in that area and all over the country and go back to the founding principles, as Ted Cruz pointed out so eloquently against Tim Kaine.
Yeah, and I was just thinking again while you were talking there and while we were watching all this stuff that that Ted Cruz talks about in that video that we played about Tim Kaine, about slavery and all that kind of stuff. Well, the Democrats are essentially wanting to do the same thing. If you don't believe me, just listen to what they've said in the past. You had that Maine House representative talk about, and she said, I don't mean to be crude, but if we don't have these immigrants, who's going to wipe our a-holes kind of thing? Then you had Jasmine Crockett talking about who's going to pick the cotton.
Is it Jasmine or Yasmin?
Jasmine.
I thought you said Yasmin.
It might be. I got a daughter named Yasmin, and she works hard. But who's going to pick the our cotton and all that?
Produce
and you hear that from them all the time now. So it's okay if they're raping, murdering, killing people, as long as they're here to pick the cotton.
Let's not forget Hunter Biden. Who's going to mow the lawns?
Yeah.
Who's going to clean your pool? Who's going to trim the hedges
and clean the hotel rooms after he's done with.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so I mean, they're telling you, just believe what they're saying. They want a class of people who will work and satisfy their basic needs.
Let me ask you something.
Crazy.
Do you ever hear a Republican say those things?
If you did, you wouldn't hear him long.
Right. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's the dichotomy here. I mean, again, you've got this one group that is a privileged group that want people to serve them, and that's the Pelosi's. Government knows best. Government's going to solve the problem. And as Ronald Reagan said, government's not the cure to the problem. Most of the time, they're the cause of the problems. And he's so right.
Yeah, there's been a few examples. What was the gentleman? I think he was a congressman from Iowa, I want to say. Was it King? What is that his name?
Steve King?
Steve, he got pushed out basically for saying a few things that people thought weren't politically correct, and the Republican Party pushed him to the back bench and it basically ousted him from Congress.
Steve King was a good friend of mine.
And the media just crucified him.
Oh, they did. And Steve got done wrong by the media and the Republican Party. Of course, the Democrats helped. He was a guy that was a true patriot to this country. He wrote a great book, and I'm going to plug it. It's called My Walk Through the Fire. And he talks about how the establishment and the Republican machine and Kevin McCarthy and their governor or their senator up there, how they all worked to get him out of there. And he was somebody, his heart was for America, and he was very constitutionally principled. And I remember what he said. He goes, we can't build a Western society with these migrants that are coming in that calves are as big as a cantaloupe and having babies, because it's going to dilute our society. And it was crude what he said, but it was accurate. And I'll probably get dinged on that on our show, John.
Well, think about even like President Trump. Of course, the gloves are off. Everything goes when they attack him. But not only do they try to oust him for what he didn't even say.
Yeah.
Like he didn't say everybody on both sides is good, calling the Nazis and all that. And literally, Biden ran his campaign, said that was the reason he got in that to start with. And when he talk about Chicago, you remember Donald Trump said, you should vote for me. What do you got to lose?
Yeah,
he was trying to help the people open their eyes up, but they made that all racist as well. So your question is a valid one, but we already have the answer.
Right.
If a Republican says anything even hinting at a racial tone, let alone actually having one, well, they're gone.
Oh, man, I experienced that so many times. And, the media is not your friend. And I've had several people when I go to Washington, I'll be up there next week, and I've been in venues where the reporters will come up and they want to talk to you. And I said, no, I'm not going to say anything to you guys. Well, why not? I says, because you guys don't report accurately. I mean, you're supposed to be journalists, and you're anything but a journalist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to totally switch gears with the time we got left here, because this is a big, big story. Over the weekend, the Russians attacked Kiev in a way that they have not since the beginning of the war. And this comes to you from Time magazine. Apparently, President Trump is prepared now to sanction Russia after a large-scale attack on Kyiv. President Donald Trump said he was ready to sanction Russia after Moscow launched its largest air attack since the war started on Sunday, setting Kiev's government headquarters on fire and killing at least 5, including 1 infant. So this thing seems to be getting ready to reach ahead. What are your thoughts, Ted?
No, I think this is something everybody needs to watch. And, when you start seeing countries align with each other, Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, all standing with Russia, who invaded Ukraine illegally. And then President Trump, we've talked about this before, and I know there's going to be some comments about that. He did a misstep when he said, I can end that war in a day. And then he belittled Zelensky in the White House, said, you started this war. This is your fault. And then he told Putin that he's going to put these sanctions on there and that you're going to have to come to the table. And Putin pretty much laughed at him, gave him the middle finger, and says, yeah, okay, we're going to work on a peace negotiations. And then he turns around and bombs Ukraine, worst bombing they've had in the capital. And he's advancing, and there's nothing coming back other than the threats of sanctions. I think we're beyond that. And this is why I argued that this should not be the United States working and negotiating with Ukraine. It should be NATO, because that was what NATO was put together. Then you've got that alliance of all those countries, I think it's 27 countries, that are aligned saying, back off, Putin, get away from our border. And then we would be a part of that, but we shouldn't be the head of the tip of the spear in this, John. And I think this is something that until something drastic happens, and again, I hope it's not us doing this unilaterally. I hope it is the force of NATO telling Putin to back off and bring this war to an end. You're going to have more of this happening, unfortunately, and there's going to be more people fleeing to come to America. And let's hope we can get these criminals off the street so that they can experience the liberties and freedoms that you and I experience every day.
Yeah, well, we have video, don't we, of Donald Trump telling Putin or one of his minions that I'll be able to do more after the election.
That was Obama.
That was Obama, wasn't it? But don't we have
flexibility
video of J.D. Vance telling them, that you need to fire the prosecutor in Ukraine or you're going to lose $1 billion?
That was Biden.
That was Biden. I'm glad you're here. But we do have video of the Secretary of State Rubio hitting a button saying we're having a reset button with Russia and Putin right now. Don't we have that?
I think we do, but I think that was Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton, all right. And I think we have, don't we have a time when George Bush said he saw the soul, or who was it? Ronald Reagan saw the soul of Vladimir Putin.
That was Obama too, wasn't it?
I think it might have been Bush. So there are
Republicans. It was Bush. He saw the soul of the devil.
So and surely we have a video or something that how much didn't Donald Trump give away Crimea to Russia, the jewel of that whole area, without a shot even being fired?
That might have been his predecessor.
That was Obama, wasn't it?
That was his predecessor.
And I mean, Trump is such a Putin pocket. I mean, he drop like supplies and relief to Russian troops in Syria? I think it was bombs he dropped on them, didn't he?
He did.
He killed Russians in Syria. I'm just trying to make a point here.
You did very well there. I'm impressed that you could bring all those things out. But they blame they're going after Trump now for the attack on that Venezuelan drug boat. And they're saying how unconscionable, Rand Paul saying this is despicable that we did that on somebody that wasn't even gone through the due process. But yet, when Obama dropped over 26,000 drone attacks and bombs, killing people indiscriminately across Iraq and Afghanistan, the media was quiet. And he did more to foment hatred against this country as far as what he did there. Going back to Russia and Ukraine and what's going on, words really do have an impact. And when Trump says we're going to end this war and you don't do it, we're going to bring Zelensky to the White House, and that went south. And then you say we're going to sanction, and we don't do it, you become a paper tiger. And I don't like sanctions because we throw them here, we throw them there, and it's get to the point where people don't even care anymore. And I think that's where Russia is. They're selling all their oil to India now, and to China, and North Korea gets it. And, so they don't really care if you sanction them, because these other countries are going to do what they're going to do, because they're not going to fall under our sanctions either.
Maybe we need to sanction them.
Well, I think, and I don't want this to happen, but you think of what Trump did with Iran. We're going to make a decision in 2 weeks, and you know what happened about a day later. He bombed their nuclear sites. We don't want that to happen with Russia, because that brings us into a war, and that's World War III starting. But there needs to be some force of action, and that's where I want the NATO countries to stand up and say, this is enough. We're going to all sanction you. And if we do that in mass, it'll get Putin's attention, and it would bring him. And China's sitting on the outside. They're not really all for Putin doing this. Because if you go back to early China, Russia took a lot of their lands under the communist Chinese. And so China, they want that land back eventually, and they'll get it. And they're waiting for Russia to be more weakened. So this is going to be interesting how this plays out. And I don't want to offend the mayor of of Minnesota, but I hope people pray about this and give guidance to our leaders. And let's hope that a higher power has influence on these people.
Well, Ted, you talked about the narco-terrorism, the boat that Trump ordered blown away, but you're missing one thing that he's doing. He's trying to make fishing great again as well, because everybody who fishes like I do knows
is that like chum?
A wreck is a really good place to fish. So if you can blow one up right in an isolated area,
right,
and I can get the coordinates to it, I mean, I've always thought about, if you get the cocaine grouper, I mean, they think how much a cocaine or fentanyl grouper would fight, man. That would be
like,
something else.
Cocaine bears.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I had to suffer through that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide. And Ted, I'm going to turn it over to you for the last word. Tell them a little bit about what we're doing very soon on the 25th.
September 25th, Black Tie and Blue Jeans. This is the largest political fundraiser for Alachua County in North Central Florida. This is going to be an amazing event. As you see on the screen right now, Byron Donalds is going to be there. He'll be speaking. He's their keynote speaker. He's a person that came to Congress. He's a Florida representative, and he's running for the Florida governor. I hear other people will be there that are running for the governorship too. And John and I will be there. We have a table. Come by, and we're going to be there early, and we'll be broadcasting from there. We'll be talking to people, getting your feedback, and sure love for you to come by there. Please become a sponsor and call Freddie on the numbers that you've seen here. And come to our website, thepoliticalpiratepodcast.com. And, we want to be more engaged with you and love your feedback. And we're all fighting to make this a better country so we can pass that on to future generations. And we're here to educate, motivate, and activate.
What he said.
Amen.
Peace out.
Y'all take care.